Maia Sandu re-elected as president, positive news despite incidents in Moldova. The Russians tried to destabilize the situation by mining bridges, tried to intimidate voters, tried to shout loudly into their loudspeakers that Sandu was buying votes, rigging votes, adding to his accounts. Despite these Russian efforts, Maia Sandu won. Pro-European forces have been maintained in the presidency, but with parliamentary elections in Moldova next year, should we expect increased Russian efforts to destabilize them, given that the parliament has more power? I apologize for interrupting, but it seems the Russians have shown their methods, giving Moldova time to prepare for future attempts to destabilize it. Of course, Russia understands that it has now suffered 2 defeats at once, which are important for it in Moldova. The first one is the referendum, where the pro-European vector won by a very, very small margin. Let's put it this way. In this context, that is, there is a statistical error, but nevertheless, Moldova is choosing the pro-European path by a small margin. Then there were the presidential elections, which also seemed to pose big problems for Sandu at the beginning, because if you watch the results throughout the night, there was a period when Stoianoglo was ahead of Maia Sandu, yes, with a slight advantage, but still ahead. Then, closer to the end of yesterday, it was 51-49 in favor of Sandu. Now, let's say I have data on the results of 99% of the count, which means that there is still 1% to be counted, but this is traditional for Ukraine. Not just a practice when the counting process slows down closer to 100%. They are recalculating everything, looking at it. But now the numbers we have are 55% in favor of Sandu and 44% in favor of Stoianoglo. In other words, we understand that Maia Sandu retains the presidency and may already be preparing for the next parliamentary elections in Moldova in a year's time. Indeed, Russia will certainly do everything in its power there, if, of course, Russia has such opportunities. Also, we should not forget that, despite the fact that Russia likes to emphasize its influence and its importance, at least in the Eurasian space, in my opinion, it is rapidly declining. But we still understand that there will be enough forces that will push Moldova in a different direction. There will be enough opposition forces around Sandu. The main thing here now is to maintain the dynamics of the European movement, which we see in Georgia, where elections were held earlier, and where, on the contrary, there is a departure from the European vector. In Moldova, on the contrary, the European vector remains, and this will certainly be a challenge for Sandu, for her team, and for the countries that are trying to promote Moldova's European integration in every way. I mean, first of all, Romania, to continue to explain to the population that the European path is the right path, and they need to move on. By the way, if we move on to other countries, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan believes that a new situation on the front line in Ukraine is possible next year, and he cites the exhaustion of both sides in the war as the main reason. Do you think we can talk about attempts to peacefully resolve the situation on the battlefield? Since the start of the full-scale war, Turkey has positioned itself as a country willing to facilitate peace talks, which initially took place in Belarus when Russia was dominant. Eventually, Ukraine succeeded in moving the talks to Istanbul, demonstrating resilience and marking a success for Ukraine, thanks to the defense forces that prevented a quick capture of Kyiv. In early March, negotiations shifted to Istanbul, a more neutral location. Belarus was the country that provided its territory to the Russian Federation for the attack on Ukraine. Since then, Turkey has consistently aimed to be the mediator in negotiations to resolve the war between Russia and Ukraine. Recently, at the BRICS summit, Turkey emphasized the need to return to the Black Sea Grain Initiative, despite its inactivity since July 2023. Meanwhile, Ukraine has successfully established exports of grain and other goods. However, Turkey still claims that it is necessary to return to this agreement. By the way, I understand Turkey. When I was in Ankara last October, I was told that this is an image project for Turkey, which is why Turkey is so eager for the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Alternative corridors, in principle, affect Turkey, and it cannot claim that it made this possible. Turkey remains committed to the Black Sea Grain Initiative, but despite signs of attrition, it doesn't signal the end of the full-scale war. Both sides have allies capable of supplying resources, like North Korea, which is escalating tensions by providing military support. Ukraine also has problems with people and weapons, but this does not mean that our partners are turning away from us. Perhaps they are all waiting to see how the night of November 5 to 6 goes, the US elections, but the support remains, because I don't think it will decrease much. Each country is calculating the risks for itself. And by the way, Turkey is doing the same. Turkey wants to play the role of mediator between Russia and Ukraine, but Turkey also has its own interests. Again, when I was in Ankara, I heard a cautious phrase that Ukraine is now winning the Black Sea for Turkey. After all, in fact, the two main forces on the Black Sea are first the Russian Empire, then the Soviet Union, now Russia, and on the other hand, the Ottoman Empire, now Turkey. By weakening the Russian fleet and driving it out of Sevastopol, Turkey is increasingly seeing that it is becoming the leading force in the Black Sea, and they certainly like it. I heard this personally during my stay there. So despite all these statements about exhaustion, I think that Turkey does not really want Ukraine to be exhausted. On the contrary, it wants Ukraine to continue to liberate the Black Sea for Turkey. Speaking of the upcoming elections, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is convinced that if Donald Trump wins the U.S. election, Europe will not be able to continue to maintain its pro-war course, as he says. That is, to help Ukraine militarily defend itself against the Russian Federation. In fact, he is right to some extent, because our partners and friends do not really have active rearmament. Or if they do, it is happening at an insufficient pace. Probably all of them except Poland. But if we talk about exclusive support for Ukraine, can our European friends and partners do without the United States? Of course, it will be difficult, but it will not be impossible. Because even if we model the situation that there will be no such support, which is not a fact, even if Trump wins, by the way, because everyone thinks that if Trump wins, all aid will be gone. But if we convince Trump, J.D. Vance, other people around Trump, and generally, let's see what the political configuration will be in this case. In order to win, we need to help. Then the aid will remain. But even if we model that, the United States will not be there. This does not mean that Ukraine is left alone with Russia, because there is Europe, but not only Europe. There are also two important world economies, in my opinion, that are among the top 10 world economies, namely Japan and South Korea. because the more Russia involves North Korea, the more this war becomes part of South Korea. Because analysts there already say that in exchange for help, yes, there will be some food there, but there will be some technology, as well as promises to North Korea to help it take over South Korea. So, of course, South Korea in no way wants Russia to win with North Korea in Ukraine. On the contrary, it wants Russia to lose here. This is its direct interest. As for the other, even more important world economy, Japan also understands that Russia's defeat in the war against Ukraine, among other things, will lead to the fact that Russia will no longer be able to maintain its eastern territories. I mean, first of all, the fact that what Japan calls the northern territories according to their constitution, and according to Russian geography, let's say the Kuril Islands. So, for Japan, the window of opportunity to return the Kuril Islands lies in the defeat of Russia. So both North Korea and Japan will support Ukraine in every way possible. Europe, especially the countries that feel threatened, such as the Baltic states and Poland, will also seek to maintain support for Ukraine. The countries of, let's say, Northern Europe, first of all, Finland, which has a very long border with Russia, and Norway, which has a small but still land border, will also seek to maintain this support. That is, Europe will not drop out of the game, despite the fact that I understand that Orban is more Trump-oriented. But, right now, with his policies, Orban has already led to the fact that for the first time in 17 years, if I'm not mistaken, the Fidesz party, which is led by Orban, is losing its dominant role in Hungarian politics. Let's see how the elections in Hungary itself will go, because these measurements of public sentiment are already showing that in some regions, especially the capital, and we know that it is in the capitals that the main events in any country take place. In Hungary, where Budapest, which is home to, if I'm not mistaken, about 10% of the country's population, there's already a great popularity of the TISA party, headed by Mr. Magyar, who is in opposition to Orban. I foresee a potential change of government in Hungary in the next few years, which could improve relations with Ukraine. Mr. Magyar's recent visit and speech near a Russian missile-damaged building signal his commitment to greater cooperation. While Orban seems to be banking on Trump, I doubt that the policy changes will align with his expectations. As you know, Dmitry Medvedev has said that if Donald Trump, if he wins the election, tries to stop Russian aggression, he could become the new John F. Kennedy, the 35th president of the United States who was shot in 1963. I never understood what he meant by that. So it's not entirely clear whether the Russians will help him or whether it will be an anti-war, perhaps some kind of pro-war protest. But do you think that Trump will take such threats into account, or do the United States generally not respond to such things? Because in the past, they were attacks on the country, not on someone personally. Well, we can see that there was indeed a threat, a direct threat to Trump's life from, let's call it Medvedev's telegram. That is, some analysts generally say that Medvedev has nothing to do with his telegram, that perhaps this is one of the channels of information from the authorities in Russia, that is primarily Putin, and for certain things that he does not want to say directly, this is done through the telegram channel of the local governor, Putin Medvedev. But, in my opinion, this was a threat to Trump's life, and here, that is, some analysts even say that Medvedev has something to do with his telegram, that perhaps this is one of the channels of information from the authorities in Russia, especially Putin. For certain things that he doesn't want to say directly, this is done through the Telegram channel of Putin's proxy, Medvedev. However, in my opinion, this was a threat to Trump's life. And the main thing here is that Trump should be told that Russia, with whom he wants to establish relations one way or another, is actually determined to physically destroy him. There are direct threats from Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council. While we usually associate this role with the council's secretary, Medvedev now appears to be making statements that the official authorities prefer not to express themselves. Given Medvedev's ties to the Kremlin, his statements likely reflect official sentiments. It's crucial to convey to Trump and his team that flirting with adversaries isn't wise. This serves as another reason to maintain support if Trump wins. As we discussed, his victory won't end aid. Rather, it may lead to a determination to maintain or even increase support. I often joke that if we view the American elections through Ukraine's interests, Kamala Harris has more red cards for support compared to Trump, who holds a joker, Ukraine's victory. Який в даному випадку є перемогою України. І ось цей джокер, як на мене, він знаходиться серед тих карт, які на руках у Трампа. Мається на увазі те, що це буде більш вольове рішення щодо суттєвого збільшення підтримки, і не лише підтримки, а безпосередньо участі. This suggests a strong-willed decision to significantly increase support, possibly including direct U.S. military involvement in Ukraine, which currently seems unlikely, as the American establishment denies such possibilities. However, an unpredictable figure like Trump could make this decision. Still, it's important to note that Harris has more red cards for maintaining aid, while Trump holds more black cards. Still, we must take into account the fact that there may be some step, however unlikely, that could significantly change the course of the current war in favor of Ukraine. Speaking of elections, Vice President Kamala Harris unexpectedly won 3 percentage points ahead of former President Trump in Iowa. And this suggests that everything that is happening now in the United States indicates that it will be very interesting there. But we are prepared for the fact that there may be some surprises in the United States after the election, such as when Trump declares himself the winner early, as he did last time. In this case, the Democrats are preparing a plan, some protests are possible, and so on. But is it even possible to predict what is actually happening? Because some agencies say Kamala Harris is ahead, others say Donald Trump is ahead, and there is no clear and unified opinion. And the election is literally tomorrow. It's supposed to start tonight. By the way, they have already started a long time ago, and Kamala Harris has already voted. Today it was announced that the results will be revealed around 3 to 5 a.m. on November 6th in Ukraine. This will clarify the winner and prompt both sides to consider their next steps. Everyone recalls January 6, 2021, when Trump supporters attempted to storm the Capitol to disrupt the announcement of results. An American police officer who was protecting the Capitol was killed. Trump has denied that trip, but let's just say that many people have hinted that it was related to his organization. However, this has not been established. However, now, of course, we should prepare for possible provocative measures. And yet, my faith in American institutions still remains, and thus the possibility that unrest will not be allowed on either side. I mean, neither the Republicans will be allowed to announce the results if they lose, nor will the Democrats be allowed to stop the announcement of the results if Kamala Harris is defeated. That is, the state will still be preserved, and I hope that the lessons of January 6, 2021 will be taken into account. And there will be no such thing on January 6. If it happens, most likely it will be on this day in 2025.